Okay, so this person wanted me to make a video on Islamic geometric patterns as well as mihrab designs, and that's what I'll be doing in this video. So the first thing I'll do is select all of these objects and delete them. I'll also get rid of these guidelines, and then we're just going to start from scratch. So let me just zoom in a little bit. And so I'll start with just a basic square. I'll click right here on the rectangle tool, and holding Control and Shift, I'm going to make a perfectly symmetrical circle, like a square like this. I'll remove the stroke, and I'll duplicate this. I'll click on it to get the rotation handles, hold Control, and just rotate this by 45 degrees like this. Then I'll select them both, and I'll do a path and union, and this will turn this into one shape like this. I'll open up the side panel, and let's give this a stroke, and let's remove its fill color. Next, I will duplicate this again and hold Control and Shift and just increase the size like this, maybe a little bit more. I can then select them both, and I'll increase the stroke width. I'll go with a thickness of about that much, and then I'll select them both. I'll group them together, and let's just scale it down to about this much size. Actually, before I do this, I will click right here when scaling objects, scale the stroke width by the same proportion. This is turned on by default, and I'm actually going to keep it turned on. So let's just scale it down, and I'll place it here. And then with this selected, I'll come over to the path effects menu, and I'll apply the tiling path effect, which is right here. By default, it's going to give you 3 columns and 3 rows, which look something like this, and you can already see the pattern is forming. You have a completely seamless pattern, and this is basically generally how you make a pattern, or how I make a pattern in Inkscape. So let's just scale this down a little bit, and then we can increase the number of columns and the number of rows, and that's basically how you create a seamless pattern like that. So that is pretty basic and pretty simple, and that's how you can do that. I'll take this pattern and I'll keep it right here, and now I'll go over something a little bit more complex, and finally we'll go over how to create the mirhab design. So let's click on the polygon tool. I'm going to select 6 corners and select polygons, not stars, rounded 0, randomized 0. Hold Control and Shift and make a polygon like this one. This selected, I'll do a path and object to path. Press N, select these nodes, hold Control on the keyboard and just drag it, and let's just make it a little bit taller, and then we can just hold Control and Shift, scale it down like this. I want to actually make it a little longer, a little taller. So I'll try that again, hold Control, and that looks okay. With this selected, I'll come over to the path effects menu and I'll apply the rotate copies path effect. So it's right here. Now before we move on to the next step, I will click and drag a grid line or a guideline, a horizontal guideline, and I'll click and drag a vertical guideline, and I'll place it here. Then I'll click on this object, press N, I'll take this diamond node and I'll move it somewhere here generally. Then I'll take this shape and I'll bring it all the way here. I'll turn snapping on and I'll zoom in, and I want this line to snap right there. And then again I'll click on it, I'll press N, take the diamond node and I'll just move it right here, somewhere here, or maybe I'll lower it a little bit. But at this point it just comes down to what you want to make. Basically, this is basically the general concept of how to create like geometric patterns easily in Inkscape using the rotate copies path effect. If I increase the number of copies here, I'll get very interesting looking geometric like shapes and patterns basically. So things like this, and then the look completely changes if you add a fill color. One more thing we can do here, let me remove the stroke color, and I'll click right here on the mirror copies option, and let's increase the number of copies to a value of like 12, let's say. And then you can see we get this like very interesting geometric effects forming on the inside of this object, right? So if I zoom out a little bit, I can now zoom all the way in. You can see it goes pretty deep and looks pretty good. And that's basically how you can create like these types of a little bit complicated shapes as well. And I can again add the stroke, remove the fill color, I can make the stroke thinner, and I can drag this diamond shaped node, and I can just place it wherever I like. So that's basically how you can do something like that. Okay, in my case I'll do something pretty simple, and we'll do something like this. I think I'll go with something like this, and then I will simply minimize this, and then I'll apply the tiling path effect. So before I do that, I'll take this guideline and remove it, and I'll take this guideline, we don't need this anymore, and I will keep this path effect active, by the way, just so I can make changes to it. I'll scale this down, and then I'll apply the tiling path effect to it. Let's just increase the number of columns, increase the number of rows. You can see how that is forming a seamless pattern right there. So let's now create the mihrab design. Let's increase the number of rows to that much, and then I'll make a rectangle. Let's give it a dark blue fill color. Let's lower that all the way to the bottom. Let's remove the stroke, and I want to just snap it right there, and I want to snap it right here as well. I'll click on this object, the black pattern, and we'll give it like color like this. So I'll take this design and I'll place it to the side just for a second. I'll press B on the keyboard to get the Bezier pen, and I'll just make a straight line like this. Next, I'll take this and I'll just move it here. I'll remove the fill color, and I will select this node and hold Control on the keyboard, and I'll just lock on this handle to the vertical axis. And I'll take this handle and just do something like this, and then I'll duplicate this object, press H on the keyboard to flip that on the horizontal axis, or you can click right here. And let's just do something like this, and select them both. We'll press N, we'll select these two nodes, and I'll click here to join them together, which will unionize the shape into one object. Next, I'll create a rectangle. Actually, before I do this, I want to press B and just join these two nodes like this. Then I'll make another rectangle, something like this. I'll remove its stroke, give it a black fill color, remove the stroke. I'll do the same thing here, remove the stroke, add a black fill color. Maybe I'll make this white actually, and I'll raise it to the top. I just want to make sure these two objects are overlapping each other. So once that is done, let's select them both, and let's do a path and union, and then we can click on this object again. Let's duplicate this object, and then on this duplicate I'll add a stroke. So let's give it a yellow stroke for now, and then I'll come over to the stroke pen tab and I'll apply a linear gradient. So let's just reduce, just make this color a little bit like this. So I want like this brownish yellow color, and then I want to add like a few more stops, maybe like 6 total stops. Let's press G on the keyboard to get the nodes tool. I'll take this and I'll place it here, and I'll take this node and I'll place it at the bottom. I'll select this top, and it already has the right color that I want, something close to this. Doesn't have to be exact, but just generally something similar to this will work. I'll select the next one and I'll increase the transparency to 100. I'll make it a little darker, maybe a lot darker, and I'll make it a little bit more orange. So let's go with like maybe like 52 or 50. And then I'll take this top and I will place it like right here. I'll take this next top and I'll place it somewhere here. I'll increase the transparency all the way and I'll keep it like somewhere there. Looks good. This will give us this nice like shimmer right here. I'll take the next top and I'll place it here, and we'll make it darker, and I'll make this one a little bit orange as well, and I'll increase the transparency. And then I'll take this one and I'll place it somewhere here, and I'll increase the transparency. Let's just change the hue to like something like this, something brownish, like a bright yellowish brown orange type of color. And then that looks pretty nice. Let's just finally take this last top and make it a little bit darker. Something that's too much orange. Let's make it a little bit more brown, and let's make it darker. If you want, you can always go back and increase the brightness or make changes if you want to, but for me this generally looks pretty nice, so I'm happy with that. I'll select the black object. Okay, one more thing I'll do is I'll remove the fill from this color, from this object. So this object only has the fill and this one only has the stroke. So I'll select the black object and give it this dark blue color like this one. And then what I want to do is I'll select the blue object. I'll come over to filters, shadows and glows, drop shadow. From the drop down you want to select inner, click on live preview. From blur color you want to select, obviously you want to select black, and you want to increase the transparency all the way, and then come over to the options tab and let's just adjust the blur color. I think this generally looks pretty nice. This generally looks pretty good. So I think this looks pretty nice. I can hit apply and close it, and I can still adjust the blur radius, so I can reduce the blur value to adjust that. But I think that looks pretty nice. Let's just select both these objects, Ctrl G to group them together. Let's scale them down a little bit, select them both, Ctrl G, scale them down. Okay, and I'll place it right here. Let's make it a little bigger now, maybe about that size, and then select the bottom object and let's center them on the vertical and horizontal axis, and I'll raise it a little bit. I'll place it right there. So with that done, we're basically done with our design. I just want to explain one last thing. I can zoom in on the pattern, I can select it, I'll come over to the path effects menu, and I can still make changes to the pattern. So I can click on it, press N to get the nodes tool, I can zoom in here, and I can hold Control on the keyboard and I can just drag it up or down to change the pattern how I would like. So that's basically what I wanted to explain. So, and with that said, I hope this video helped. If you liked it, you may also like one of my other videos. Thank you for watching.